welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET&R's special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of the micro, small and medium enterprise sector. On this series, it's our endeavor to bring you expert advice from renowned business leaders to help you grow every aspect of your business. On MSME Dialogues today, I'm in conversation with S. Gopalakrishnan. He's popularly known as Chris. He's the co-founder of Infosys. He's also the chairman of Axelor Ventures. Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'd like to kick this conversation off by asking you the one piece of advice you would have for MSMEs and entrepreneurs from your own personal experience of having set up Infosys.
Setting up a business, creating an institution is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You need patience, you need perseverance, you have to give it time, and success comes after some period of time.
What's the one piece of advice then specifically for players who are in the tech space as far as the MSME sector goes that you would have, Chris?
See, everything is on the side of an entrepreneur today. The costs have come down. With mobile and cloud, you have a domestic market, you have a very, very large market on tech-enabled businesses. So everything is on the side of the entrepreneur, the MSME sector. Now, what is needed is to have something of value that consumers or your customers are willing to pay for. Ultimately, you need to make money, so you have to make sure that the financial model is right. You have to make sure that there is value delivered and profit comes to the business. I think that's very, very important.
So that said, in terms of the advice, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges today that you think companies which are in the tech space are facing, and what advice would you have for MSME players in terms of how to really deal with that on a day-to-day basis and overcome that?
Markets are very volatile. Things can happen overnight, which changes the environment completely. New competitors can come from anywhere. So you have to be always on your toes. You have to make sure that you have enough cash for the next 6 to 8 months, maybe even a year.
You're someone who, of course, had to deal very closely with regulations and the regulatory framework when you were at Infosys. How difficult is it then, in your opinion, to really deal with the regulatory framework for the tech space, specifically a large number of MSMEs? They're very small outfits, Chris. They call us, they write into us, say that a lot of their time really goes in just managing regulations and managing the regulatory framework. What advice would you have for the viewers of the show in how to really effectively be able to manage this?
First of all, you have to be aware of the regulations that affect your business. You need to make sure that you have somebody in your team who are monitoring this on an ongoing basis. Second, you have to have the capability to influence that and maybe manage the way regulations are changed. Of course, for an MSME, this is a very tall task. So my advice would be for them to join an industry body, be part of a larger team which is working with the government. Fortunately, governments today work with industry bodies when they formulate their policies, when they formulate changes to the policies and things like that, and hence being part of a industry body gives you at least the ability to influence it or at least understand where regulations are going.
Well, the government on its part is, of course, going all out to actively woo companies with its Make in India and Digital India campaign, Chris. The feedback that we get from a lot of MSMEs and entrepreneurs is that they yet to see the benefits of this really start to, trickling down to the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak. How do you see MSMEs and entrepreneurs participating more in this?
So on the positive side, government is very keenly looking to support, including even creating fund of funds that ultimately will benefit the MSME sector. But as you said, if you wait for everything to be in place, all the policies to be in place, all the funds to be in place, you may have to wait a long period of time because government works at its own pace. My advice would be to try and minimize the role of the government in your business. Try and see whether you can insulate yourself, anticipate any changes that are needed, and work with as little impact from government as possible.
So like you're saying, the government of course has set up the fund of funds. Now you are a venture capitalist that looks at and invests into companies. From that experience, what advice would you have for entrepreneurs and MSMEs which are looking to raise funds? There's a constant question of, do they go to the banks? Do they go to the venture capitalists? Crowdfunding is something that seems to be picking up right now. What advice would you have for companies in terms of, which of these routes they explore, and at what stage of the business life cycle should they be looking at each of these options?
See, it really depends. You have to make sure that you understand the different types of funding that are available. Equity, venture fund, debt fund, friends and family. So at the early stage, in the beginning of setting up a company, I would advise actually look at friends and family, angel investors. When you are ready with the business in terms of, you have a proven prototype which has been demonstrated, which has been tested in the market, then you are ready for venture funding. Then working capital, for example, you can look at going to a bank and get debt funding.
Chris, you were just talking about the fund of funds. That essentially is a move to try and address, the entire financing and funding options for MSMEs. Speaking of that, do you think there's a strong case for a different regulatory environment for MSMEs? Funding is something that has been set up like we're talking about, but as far as say legal goes or whether it's policy matters, there's the Mudra Bank also as far as funding goes. How about other areas that relate to the work that MSMEs do?
See, for MSMEs, most of the time, the requirement comes for working capital. The requirement comes for not equity funding, but on ongoing basis. For example, technology upgradation, things like that. And this is where they have to either look for banks or they have to look at other financial institutions. Or they have to look at grants from the government. There are many different grants from the government for technology upgradation or soft loans from the government. So they need to actually scan the environment. Again, I would advise them to work with an industry body as closely as possible so that they know what options are available.
How does one survive the first year of being an MSME or an entrepreneur, Chris? What advice would you give to, for example, the companies that you invest in what it really takes to be able to take on the challenges of that first year of setting up?
So first of all, you must have a prototype, a product which is validated by customer or consumer. It's very important to know that, okay, you have something of value. Second, you need to make sure that you have the economic model in place. You know how every rupee of revenue comes in and where every rupee of cost is going, and what is the break-even point, what is the profit, and things like that. Third, as you scale up, you need to plan for milestones, and so you get funding to reach that milestone. Once you reach that milestone successfully, you ask for the next round of funding. This journey has to be very well planned out. A lot of time what happens is you make a mistake and you run out of cash, and then even if you have a good product, the company can't go forward. And when you don't have cash, when you can't pay your employees, or when you cannot pay your suppliers, then you're out of business. So this journey has to be very well planned out, very well thought of.
I want to talk about an area that again you've dealt with rather closely at your role at Infosys, and this is as far as talent goes. Let me start by asking you, because I'm getting very differing views and very different opinions on this. Do you think that Skill India really is sufficient in the form it is in right now to address the skill issues of the industry?
See, Skill India is targeted towards creating capability and capacity in the things like a factory worker or a service provider at home, or a lathe operator, people like that. These are skills that are relevant for large businesses, self-employed people, things like that. When it comes to a tech MSME, typically what you're looking for is somebody in a software engineer, somebody who can design and develop a system, or somebody who can sell, in the sales side and things like that. These are the two areas that you look for. These are going to be difficult and challenging skills to recruit, and you have to again have a plan, make sure that you're very well networked with the community, where you can go for.
All right, let's take a very short break. I'm in an exclusive conversation with Chris Gopalakrishnan, the co-founder of Infosys. I will continue this conversation on the other side. To stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow and on MSME Dialogues. Today I'm in conversation with Chris Gopalakrishnan, the co-founder of Infosys. He's also now the chairman of Axelor Ventures. Chris, thanks for joining us. So given your personal experience in the tech space, I want to ask you what advice you would have specifically for companies, for MSMEs, for entrepreneurs who are in the tech space when it comes to really, managing talent, managing skill, and how do you really go about bridging that gap?
Again, just like you do financial planning, you have to do your HR planning. At the initial stages, you have to probably select the most important, the key people, and give them some equity in the company. Typically what happens is startups reserve 10% of equity for key employees. Then as you scale up and you're recruiting now the 30th employee or the 40th employee or the 100th employee, you go to market and recruit the right people. You have to have a mechanism to evaluate them constantly and continuously, and if you find that the person is not delivering, you need to have a way to give feedback, and if the feedback is not taken, letting people go.
So is investment into talent by companies at an individual level, like for example Infosys has done at its Mysuru campus, is that an only solution, and is that a solution that MSMEs, cost that MSMEs can afford to take on, in your opinion, Chris?
So you have to have a plan to continuously add to the employee's skill set. They have to they have to learn. When it comes to MSME, probably you can't go through a formal program, you can't invest in a campus like Infosys did at Mysore. So you have to look at other means of probably exposing them through public programs and things like that, investing in their education through other programs and things like that. This is something again you need to plan for, because if the company has to keep up with changes in technology, it is through the people keeping up with the changes in technology. If your people learn, the company also is a learning company, and that has to be planned through the right and appropriate means. Setting up a campus like Infosys is for somebody who is very, very large.
At a time when a lot of people, students seem to be going towards the more glamorous, if I can call it that, industries or companies like the Flipkarts of the world or other online retailers, how does an MSME, which is in, say, the manufacturing space, compete effectively to get the right talent?
So, see, the most important thing is you want an employee who can learn, who is dedicated, who is disciplined, who is loyal. So, you look for, certain life skills and you look for certain knowledge. It's not necessary that you get superheroes always, and that, if you keep that in mind, I believe that you can recruit people. I would use the example of Soho, for example. They've taken people who are actually just out of school and things like that. They are not really the stars that you would consider, but through a program of continuous education, they are getting the best out of these people, and they are able to manage all their needs, HR needs actually. On top of that, of course, you get people who are very, very loyal, who are dedicated, because they now see that there is a huge value add to their own worth, because they are learning skills which they otherwise would not have even been able to learn. So you have to think about models like these when you look at competing for talent.
Okay, I want to now talk about a topic that we discuss quite often here on the Leaders of Tomorrow in ET Now, but not often enough, and that's the concept of mentors and mentorship really for MSMEs and entrepreneurs. Chris, what comments would you have, what advice would you have for the viewers of this show in just how crucial it is to find a mentor, and how does one go about finding a mentor who's a right fit for the business you're in?
Being a founder, being a CEO is a lonely job, and you need people who have been there, who have faced situations, who can help you when you come upon a challenge. So you need to probably look around, find people who are in other industries, who have had some experience, who are reasonably successful, and you will always be able to find. There are various challenges that you would be faced with, and you need to have somebody you can quickly talk to on a one-on-one confidential basis and get some advice. And I would really say that you have to look around and find people. Especially for MSMEs, there are a large number of MSMEs who are there. When I look at CIF, for example, that's the strength that I see, 7,000 plus members, and about 60% of their MSMEs, and we are trying to create a network of these people who can mentor other MSMEs. So we need to look for opportunities like this to find the right mentors.
Now, I know that, as part of the investments that you do at Axelor, you do provide mentoring, mentorship and mentoring to the companies that you invest in. But what about those companies which don't have, say, VC funding, which don't have PE funding? I'm assuming that such hand-holding and that such advice comes at a cost. Would it then still be a cost that you would advise MSMEs and startups to take onto their books?
Normally, I've found that, good mentors don't charge anything. They like to share their experiences, they like to help. So the cost that you incur is finding the right person whom you can feel comfortable with, talking about difficult problems and difficult situations, and then spending maybe once a month a dinner, once a month a lunch, or once a month couple of hours or a coffee, or if there's an emergency, being able to call up that person and spend half an hour on the phone with that person. So that's something you need to actually do, and I would really advise every CEO to actually find somebody in an industry that may not be the same as their own, but somebody who has done this and faced similar issues and similar challenges.
Please talk to us about Axelor, and what kind of investments do you typically look at? What are some of the trends, and how do you really decide to invest in one company and not another? Because I only presume that you do get a lot of proposals, a lot of inquiries.
So at Axelor, we look at 3 stages. The first is looking at idea to prototype very early on. Somebody just wants to set up a business and get the business running. The second stage is from prototype to launch, where they want to go from maybe a single customer, validated product, to maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 customers, and then from launch to scale. And this whole process is typically the first 2 years of setting up a business. That's what we look at Axelor. Yeah, we do get a large pipeline. For example, the current batch has 9 companies, and we got about 200 applications, and we select. And sometimes we select based on gut feel, because when somebody has just an idea, either we are looking at investing in the people, or maybe that idea sounds interesting, sounds good, and then we take a bet.
As we wind down this conversation, a quick last word from you, Chris. Do you see, in your opinion, more funds really going after tech and technology-oriented startups and MSMEs? What about traditional areas like manufacturing?
Whole space of venture funding typically is targeted towards tech or tech-enabled businesses that are typically innovative, disruptive, or new. When you look at traditional businesses, typically the growth is slower, and the funding is traditional funding from bank and maybe self-funded or family and friends, etc. Having said that, I feel that this is the best time to be an entrepreneur, to start a business in India, any business, because there's a lot of excitement about startups, a lot of support from government on startups. The whole area of ease of doing business, reducing the cost and the time taken to set up a business, etc., is very proactively being approached by the government. So this probably is the best time. And when you have an economy that's going to grow at 8+%, lots and lots of opportunities for new businesses are there, in every sector.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. That's an exclusive conversation with Chris Gopalakrishnan, completely out of time on this episode of MSME Dialogues. Do remember, you can write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com, reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or you can always call us on that number on your screens. Thanks so much for watching.